Just point it at me. You ready?
Yep.
Are you pointing at me?
No, I'm pointing it at your feet.
I have an ugly feet.
I'm pointing it at that grain bin behind you.
Nice. So, you know, it's been a long time since I've done another one of these, but unfortunately, as life goes, sometimes you just get really busy. I know I promised to do the Molex, or not the Molex.
Molex.
It's so sad. I know I promised to do the SATA power cable, but I really only have enough time tonight to do the SATA data cable. It's a really easy sleeving job. It only takes a few seconds to do. Well, that's a lie. It takes a little bit more than a few seconds. So, well, as you can see, the tools in front of me are some of the tools that we're going to be using today for the, and I can never say this right, and I've probably messed it up a billion times, the data cable for SATA, or the SATA data cable. Yes, that is how you say it. Not the best way of saying it at all. So we're going to start that over. The tools that you see in front of you are the ones that I'm going to be using today. Today's guide is going to be really, simple, really fast. There's really not much to it. Most of it is detail work, mainly with shrinking the heat shrink, measuring out the pieces, just really taking your time. Then again, what have we done so far that doesn't, make you take your time and have patience anyway? So we're just going to jump right in. If you have any questions at the end of this, you guys know to send me a PM. So I'm going to move this stuff out of my way here so I can actually work without burning myself with my heat gun, which I tend to do pretty much about every day. Or anytime I actually use it. I don't just walk in here and get burnt by it. Although sometimes it feels like that. So, your typical SATA data cable, there we go, I actually got it down. They're pretty simple. If you're going to sleeve a cable though, I would mention try to get a color that's going to be, a base color that you're going to use. For instance, let's say I was going to do this in white. Now, I don't know of any company that actually makes white cords like this. So you're going to actually might want to take some white electrical tape and go ahead and cover it up. The reason is, and I have one of these done already over here, is no matter how tight you get this, let's see if I can get it close, you're always going to see through it a little bit. The cable underneath this one that I have done already is actually a black cable. And you'll see all sorts of colors of these. You'll see gray ones. I think I got super, I don't know what that is. Red is common, orange is common. You get all sorts of colors. So if you're going to put white sleeving over that, you're going to actually see that red through there some, and it will turn it pink. And that goes for any color, really. If you're going to put black over this, if I put black over this, I'd be able to see it a little bit. So the best, sleeving for this red cable, obviously, would be red sleeving, and it would look awesome. So try to keep that in mind when you're doing this. Again, everything is detail. You don't have to do that, but it looks phenomenal when you choose to do it right. So, how to start? Well, of course, you're going to want your cable, and you're also going to want your heat shrink. Now, I have a ton of this white stuff. The sleeving and the heat shrink I'll be using for this is MDPC. There's a bunch of other, heat shrink manufacturers and sleeving people, and I think Cobra and FTW, and they all have their they have their how many times can I say that, really? I almost said it again. Different kinds of heat shrink and different kinds of pre-made SATA sleeve like this right here. The difference between this and normal sleeve is it is actually flattened and it is made to go over, see if I can show you, made to go over this so it fits over the connector, so you don't have to snip this. No snippy snip. There's no point to it. You can do that if you wanted to make a custom cable, but it's kind of a pain. So I am going to be using the white today and completely going against what I just told you guys not to do, simply so you guys can see it. I won't be using the white heat shrink because I want you to see. I'm going to use actually black because I want you to see, like I did with this cable, how the heat shrink goes on there and what kind of results you can get from it. So again, if you're going to use white sleeving, try to use a cable that's either white underneath, or use some electrical tape. It's really easy, takes 2 seconds, and it really won't add too much more stiffness to your cable. When I cut my heat shrink, oh my gosh there, when I cut my heat shrink for this, I either use a jig like this right here, which is really easy. I just put it right in right there, and then I'll take a knife and I'll chop it. If you don't have a jig, I'll show you how to do it without one. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's 4 pieces of wood, 6 screws. It takes 5 seconds to make. If you ever want any more details on it, just let me know and I'll show you how. But if you don't have that, like most normal people, I'm not calling anybody who does have one not normal, because that would be me, I take a ruler. Now, you can make these any size you want, and you don't have to use the size I use. It's definitely not the be-all and end-all. Experiment. Find out what you think looks better for your build. For this one, I will be using 1/8 under an inch. And I have to be completely honest, I'm not the greatest at reading a ruler, but I do know it's 7/8. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that this is at a 90-degree angle, that cut right there, and it is straight as I can possibly get it. Then I'll line the end up with my 7/8 mark, and I'll eyeball it to make sure it's straight, and then I'll go over to the end of the ruler, and I will make a tiny cut. Now, I've seen this done a bunch of different ways using razor blades or anything else. This is not the be-all and end-all way. This is just the way I do it. There's billions of ways that are way easier, I bet. This is just the easiest and fastest method for me because it's what I've been doing for a long time. And so I'll take my heat shrink tube, I'll line it up to this edge of my ruler, and if you can see here, you'll see my little notch right there. So I'll take my scissors and I'll line up that notch, making sure everything's flush, and I will just cut. And hopefully it comes out as straight as can be. And then I'll just do that again. Again, there's probably way better methods to doing this. And if you really wanted to be crazy about it and get down to the millimeter, you could do so. Get yourself some calipers or whatever in the world that they're called, and go to town, man. This is what you make it. This is exactly how perfect you want it to be. But this works pretty good for me, and I've never gotten a bad result from doing it. It works just fine. So we have our 2 pieces of heat shrink. Most of the time you're going to want to do a couple more and just have a whole little pile of them going, because every once in a while I break one. So we're just going to hope that I don't do that on this one, because I'm going to try to make this video under 20 minutes and I'm not doing very good so far. So this sleeve. Now, the sleeve is kind of the same way. I like to use my snip to do this, but it depends on how big the head on your snip is. So for you guys, I'm going to use scissors. Again, I'm going to make sure to cut it at a 90-degree angle. And this is why you want to try not to use the scissors. Again, I would just take the scissors and I'll just do it right now. It makes kind of a mess. It doesn't cut the greatest. Leaves this crazy, weird craziness going on right here. So we're going to do it with the snips. Now, again, you want to make sure it's a 90-degree angle. And you might not be able to cut all the way with your snips. But you can snip all the way through the other way. And again, my camera hates me and it won't zoom. There we go. Get your mess out of the way here. So, now that we did that, we're going to go ahead and take our lighter and we'll melt it. Oh, try not to melt the camera. And I'll just barely, or one more time, barely melt it. Because I need this to be malleable enough to be put back on the connector. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Simply put, you take the connector, you take the heat shrink, and you put it on it. Now, if you melted it too much, you're going to have a big problem getting it on. But see, I might have done it just a little bit too much myself. And I think I still got it on. The less you melt it, the easier it is going to get on. But I like to melt milk. Wow. Don't know where my mind is today. Not into what I'm doing, clearly. I do like to make it melted a little bit right to the tolerance point so that you almost can't get it on. Because it leaves a little lip on there, and that's what's going to catch onto the heat shrink and hold it on. So I'm just going to keep doing this, making sure not to, you know, tug on the heat shrink or on the sleeve too much, because I don't want to make it off. And we're just going to town here. And you're probably wondering, Lutro, why did you not cut the other end? That is an awesome question, whoever asked that. The reason I didn't is because you can try to measure it the way we normally measure things, but man, is it a pain to try to get it right on, because it contracts, it doesn't work the greatest, and you can eventually eyeball it. I tend to do that sometimes, but when you're first starting out, this is the easiest way to do it. So, I have it put all the way up to the edge of the connector, and we'll just follow this all the way down, and boom, there we go. That's our end. So you can see that this is bigger. As you can see me push down right there, there's a little bit of room in there. I want to stretch out this sleeve so that it's no room in there, tight. So I'll go to my end over here, I will pinch down, and then I will just slide my hand up right to the end here. So this is the hard part. You can see, it's gonna be hard, you can see through this connector where the end meets. The same end on here. What I'll do is I'll take a snip or scissors, and I will go right up to that edge, and I will make a small cut. Okay, and I'll let it go, and then I will back up the sleeve a little bit, not taking the whole thing off, but just backing it up, so that now I can see where my cut was, and I will cut it. Again, making sure it's a 90-degree angle, trying not to make a huge mess, and trying to do it as clean and as straight as possible. And now I have my end. Of course, we're going to heat it up again. That was easy. And we're going to push it right back over the connector. Now, it might not go over all the greatest if you melted it right, but if you have a little patience and a little time, you just wiggle it right on. It'll go right on. Now at this point, before we shrink anything, we'll see that we have a little bit of room here. That's fine because we're going to stretch that. But we're going to test it to make sure that it's right. So again, we'll clamp down on this side and we'll pull through. And if we barely make it, we'll readjust a little bit and pull her on through. And boom. So that's going to be where we want it to be. So we're going to take our heat shrink, pull this other side up, as much as possible here, and try to make sure that the sleeve, I got the cord flying everywhere, making sure that it's as flush as possibly can be. Then what we'll do, and this is kind of important, we'll make sure that when this heat shrink, it's going to hold down. We don't want any stray fibers coming over this connector. So I'll hold them down right here, and I'll do a little tightening just through this area, and I'll hold it tight. Now you might see a little bit of a ridge right there. That's fine, because I want that to kind of be there so that the fibers don't end up on the top of here. Because if they end up on the top or on the sides of it anywhere, they're going to end up trapped in that heat shrink and they're going to make it look terrible. So I'm going to grab the heat shrink. It also kind of helps when you're putting on the heat shrink too, because as you can see, this is pretty tight. But that's fine. If you did everything right, you'll see that it went right over it, which is awesome. Now, I had to switch my finger around there because I had the wrong side up. So what I'll do to make sure is everything's still right is I'll pull it up and I'll put it back down. Now, you can shrink these in a bunch of different places. You know, it's kind of up to you. On these metal ones, my favorite thing to do is to get it right underneath the plug here. If you can see that. That happens to be my favorite spot to do it. Right underneath that plug. And so my hand is actually starting to cramp, so normally I don't hold it this long. I'll grab my heat gun and I'll try to shrink it from the bottom up. And I'll do little bits at a time. Going around the other side. Try not to burn my fingers. So if I can try to show you some of this. Just taking small sweeps. Now, this is another important part. I will grab the sleeve down here. I let my thumb relax there. Held that for a long time. And I'll try to pinch it down so that it's contracted, because there'll be a little bit of play in here. So I'll pinch the sleeve down and try to pull it down a little bit without pulling it out. If you do it right, you'll notice that a little bit more slack gave right here in the heat shrink. So now I'll shrink that back down. Trying my best again not to burn my fingers. Oh, perfect. Now I can show you guys what happens when you do it too much. That will happen. We had a blowout. But this gives you a good view on what's going on in the inside here. You can see where the heat shrink's going to hold it into place, and you can see where it would have been perfectly. So unfortunately I can't use this one, so I will cut it right off. Awesome. Well, no, that's not really awesome. That kind of bites actually, because now I gotta do it again. And I'll probably do this one kind of fast, because better be honest, my thumb is cramping. Kind of what happens when you have carpal tunnel. You tend to lose your grip on stuff, including reality, as my wife would like to tell me. And so I'm going to put that heat shrink back up underneath that connector. Sometimes it likes to go right in there and sometimes it doesn't. Let my thumb relax a little bit. Yeah, you'd think the one thing that a person with carpal tunnel would choose not to enjoy a lot would be sleeving, but you know, of course, I know I gotta like sleeving. Alright, enough jibber jabbing. Let's get, again, we're gonna start from the bottom up. Doing it in small amounts. And the reason why we do small amounts is because we want it to be straight. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to hold her down. Try to get the play out of there. Awesome. Of course, I'm blowing on it as normal. Yeah, it pulled on me a little bit, but you will end up with something like that. Now, again, this is all personal preference. You can not do the entire plug and you can have it go down a lot more. It's kind of all on how you choose to do it. So now we got to do another piece of heat shrink instead of doing the normal jazz here. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll cut another one because it's fun, right? Not really. I should have really just cut one in the first place. And that's why I said it's so important that you make sure that you're prepared for this. Because it's kind of a pain to, switch gears right in the middle of something. Nobody likes to do that. Nobody. Awesome. Heat shrink. Obviously you know what that is. So we're going to pull this through. Pull it right on through. And this one we're going to have to do a little tight. Awesome. As you can see, boom, right up on the connector. Oh, and I grabbed it on the wrong side again. So smart. Alright. We're going to throw our heat shrink right on there before my hand starts cramping. Oh, too late. Look at that. And put that right underneath there, and we're going to hit that up with the heat gun. Same thing, start with the bottom, go up. Small movements. Try to go around. And I actually have to switch hands here really quick because my hand totally gave out there. That is the awesome thing about having little weird typing stuff. Most of us nerds have that problem. Mine just happens to be particularly great. So we're going to finish shrinking this real quick here. I'm going to blow on it to make sure that it's stiffened up before we let go of it. And that's what we call. And it should be pretty stiff. Now, if everything went the way it was supposed to, the cable should be nice. And it should look something. Oh, come on now. I've got to be all artistic here, and then I can't even do it. It should look something like this. Now, again, it's completely up to you. I did this one kind of fast. If this was me, I would actually end up redoing this end here more than a few times. My personal preference is that the heat shrink is straight. See, there's a little bit of bow in there. I really don't like that in there. But for your sake and mine, and being that I've already hit 25 minutes, dang, even with the easy, simple guide here, always wasting people's time. There's a few people that love to waste their days just watching these. But I would take my time and I'd redo them a few times. It's fun. You can mix and match your heat shrink, and it's all preference, you know. And they look great in the system if you take care of them. If you shrink them properly, like we did just now, you know, that's not going to come apart. And how many people sit there and play around with these all day? If you take your time and put them on there, they'll be pretty permanent. It's when you're trying to jack them at crazy 90-degree angles that you might end up having some problems. And if that's the case, if that's how you're going to be using it in your case, might I suggest getting a connector that goes 90 degrees. How awesome is that? So if you're going to use it in that type of application, you know, find the right cable for it and then do it. That'll save you the frustration of having the sleeve rip out of there. Here, actually, I can probably do this one for you guys. It doesn't look that great when you try to put it at a 90-degree angle. It's gonna bend your. It just looks terrible when you do that. And more than most likely, you'll end up pulling the sleeve right out. So get the right cord. They're pretty cheap. I don't really have a source to give you guys, but that's pretty much about it. I really don't have anything more to tell you guys, unless you guys have questions about the jig, or you know, my 80s looking ruler or anything of a sort. If you just take your time, you really don't need much except for, you know, the proper fatter heat shrink, obviously. If you ever have problems getting the heat shrink over the connector, or if you have an oddball connector, remember the trick that I showed you. If you take a, you know, I don't have one laying around. Oh, I suppose I do. Oh, of course I do. This isn't quite the one I would use, but you'd use a needle nose pliers and you would just, you know, expand it out. You can expand your heat shrink quite a bit, and it will always go back to what it was designed to shrink to before it'll rip open. One of the reasons I like MDPC heat shrink is because you can push it quite far, and it will always shrink down the way it's supposed to. But remember, the more you shrink it, or the more you stretch it out, the more likely it's gonna tear if you put it on something bigger than what it can handle stretch-wise, because it'll pop right off. And that's it, guys. I'm gonna stop blabbing. If you guys like these videos, please subscribe. You know, normally you would say give me rep on OCN, but I'm not gonna say that because that's dumb. Your comments and, you know, having you guys say thank you and whatnot on OCN, that's enough for me. I appreciate all the camaraderie and, you know, just getting to know you guys. So, you know, thanks for your time, and that's it. You're good? Mm-hmm. We're really good? Mm-hmm. We're super good. Mm-hmm. We're phenomenal. Mm-hmm. We're the best. Mm-hmm. You sure? Mm-hmm. Is that all you can say? Mm-hmm?
Molex.
Molex. What's up, guys? Obviously, that was the data sleeving guide for the data cables of the SATA variety. Gosh, that didn't make sense. Yeah, the data cable of the SATA. It's still not coming out right. I'm going to give up because you guys just watched the guide and you guys know exactly what you did. So if you have any questions on any of it, like how to properly say what it is, don't PM me because I'm not going to be able to help you with that. But if you have any questions on any of the guides at all, please feel free to try to contact me either through YouTube or OCN. I look forward to your guys' questions. I also wanted to say thank you guys so much. You know, the response for all these guides has been nothing, you know, short of awesome. Almost weekly, I get at least a couple people sending me, you know, thank you PMs, posting on my thread about how they're encouraged and they feel confident enough to jump into a sleeving job. That was the whole point of me doing these. It wasn't for financial gain, it wasn't to endorse any company, but it simply to share, you know, the time that I put into this and share a passion of mine. I enjoy sleeving a lot. I enjoy even more so watching other people create something that they can be proud of. So If I can help in any way, please let me know. You know, if you guys want to keep seeing these, also let me know. And that's it. You know, how many times can I say you know? How many times was that, honey?
47.
47? You sure you can count?
Yes.
Okay. My wife can count. So that's all I got for tonight, and thanks.